Happy Valentine's Day. I hope you're someplace warm where you can celebrate that today. The weather pretty much took care of the Bible conference in Cassville for me, so I'm home this weekend after all. But anyway, last week we started looking at Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4. Paul was talking in the book of Galatians, and he quoted that verse, Habakkuk 2:4, that says, "The just shall live by faith." He was talking there in Galatians to those who were trying to keep the law in order to be right with God. And he reminded them that the law cannot save anyone, it cannot justify anyone, it cannot redeem anyone. And he quoted that verse, Habakkuk 2:4, "The just shall live by faith." And last week we talked about that it was the three verb tenses of salvation: salvation past, salvation present, salvation future. Last week we talked about justification, the just, those who've been justified. I've been pronounced not guilty. I've been pronounced just, righteous in the sight of God, not because of anything I've done, but because the fact that Jesus died on the cross for me. So I have been saved. When I asked Jesus to come into my heart to forgive me, when I said I believe he died for me on the cross, that took care of the justification. But it doesn't stop there. I've been saved by justification, but now I'm being saved by sanctification. Just because the Holy Spirit saved me, that doesn't mean he just left me on my own to get by as best I can. No, he came to live in my heart to bring about that process of sanctification. Now, I know that word sanctification is a big word and it's hard to understand. I remember when I was in seminary, I asked a professor, I said, "Can you explain to me the doctrine of sanctification?" And he said, "Well, son, it means to be set apart." And I said, "Yes, I know. I read that in the textbook. I've looked it up in Bible dictionaries. I've read commentaries. But that just not doing much for me to be set apart. What does that really mean?" And he looked at me with one of those professorial looks and tones in his voice, and he said, "Son, you just need to search the scriptures more diligently to find your answers." And so that's what I did. And I came up with a very simple explanation and illustration to explain sanctification. The word sanctification really means to use something for the purpose for which it was designed and created. If I'm sharing a message about this in church, I always take a chair up on the platform with me and I just ask the folks, "What is this?" And they look at me kind of strange, like I'm trying to set them up or something. They said, "Well, it's a chair." I said, "That's right. This chair is designed and created by someone with one specific purpose in mind." Now, you can do a lot of things with that chair. You can stand on it to reach up and get something you're too short to get a hold of. I mean, you can hang your jacket over the back of it. You can do a lot of different things with a chair, but it was created and designed with one purpose in mind, and that was for someone to sit on. So when someone sits down on that chair, that is the process of sanctification. It's being used for the purpose for which it was created and designed. So if I'm going to understand this business of being sanctified by the Holy Spirit, I first got to back up and ask myself a couple of questions. Number one, who created me and why did he design me the way he did? What's my purpose? Well, a little clue to that's found back in 1 John chapter 4, where it says that God is love. The mere fact that God is love demands that that love has an object to express itself to. Have you ever felt affection towards someone else and you tried to show that affection to them, but it wasn't received or it wasn't reciprocated? Do you remember how frustrating that felt? Now, give me a little latitude here. I understand God doesn't have problems. I know that. But it was as though God had a problem. He's love. Love demands that it has an object to express that love to. And that's why he created you and me. He wanted someone who would receive his love because they chose to, not because they had to, but because they chose to, and return that love back toward God again. And that's the process of sanctification. When we're lost, when we're unjustified, we don't have a relationship with God. We can't receive his love. We can't send that love back to him in return. And that's why he justified us. That's what we talked about last week. I've been pronounced just, righteous in his eyes. And when that happened, he placed his Holy Spirit within me that if I would yield to him, now that's important. He won't force you to do anything. He will only fill you and sanctify you to the degree that you allow him to. And so when I am willing to surrender to him and simply say, not my will, your will be done. God, I may not be happy with my circumstances. I may not like my situation. All of those things that Habakkuk griped and complained about in chapter 1. But I realize you're on the throne. You're in control. You have a plan. And there is a purpose behind all of this stuff. Even though I can't see it and don't understand it, I trust you. And when I do that, then the Spirit has the freedom to move in my heart, to give me peace, to give me the assurance that God is there, to give me answers to my prayers that I'd never heard before. But those things don't happen unless I'm willing to yield and say, Father, I want you to be in control. And that's the process of sanctification. I've been saved, but I'm being saved. He's never going to leave me or forsake me. He loves me. He wants to be a part of my life. He wants to be a part of the daily of my life. All of those things that we think are too small or insignificant to bother God with, friend, that's what he wants to hear. He wants us to bring everything to him in prayer. Remember, we quoted that verse from Proverbs chapter 3 a few weeks ago. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. In all your ways, all those little things as well as all the overwhelming things and everything in between. He wants to hear it all. He wants us to express our concern in order that in that process of exchange, that he can remind us that he loves us, that he wants to be with us, that he wants us to come to him with everything. That's the process of sanctification. God conforming me to his will, his desires, because I want him to, not because I have to. I don't understand how Calvinists deal with this whole issue of sanctification. They believe that we've been predetermined, everything is predestined, it's all mapped out, you don't have any say in anything, and all of those kind of things. If that were true, then there would be no need for the process of sanctification. If I'm going to be what God created and designed me to be, and he's going to force me to do that, and I don't have any say in it, then there's no need for the process of sanctification. That process of God teaching me his love, teaching me of his care, teaching me of his protection, teaching me of his provision, all of those wonderful things that we discover along this pilgrimage called the Christian life. Those things happen through the process of sanctification. When we're praying, when we're reading our Bible, when we're in fellowship with the family of God, when we're trusting in him, when we're surrendering to him and saying, not my will, thy will be done. That is the process of sanctification. So I've been saved. I'm being saved. I've been justified. I'm being sanctified. And that is a process that will go on from now till the day I die. And then I'll be glorified. And we'll talk about that next week. God bless. And again, happy Valentine's Day. Have a great, great weekend.